So as you watch this video, you might feel a little bit disturbed by the content, or you might also not be surprised by what I'm about to say. So to keep it simple, in MOT as well as LTA, they are like it's filled with a lot of bureaucracy as well as top down and hierarchy. It, it's like the whole system, the way it's structured, it's just very, very top down, and it takes like 10, 20, 30 years to even promote out to the highest ranks. And because of that, most people in said organizations, including Bus Planning League, which is BPL, they do not have a say in like route amendments. They are only there to plan based on what they're told, and they're only there to, do the dirty work for the bosses. Like, for example, there is also another division in LTA called Bus Assets, and the deputy director of that particular division, well, let's just put it this way, he's the one that is actively preventing the procurement of any bendy buses, articulated buses right now. Even if the people under him suggest, they say that bendy buses are the way to go, as long as you don't get through this guy, you would never get any bendy buses. So unfortunately, that is kind of the sad reality. So yeah. And I'm just gonna spill the tea right now. His department has the highest turnover rate, which means people either transfer out or they just outright resign, has the highest turnover rate in the entire organization, and it speaks volumes. All he's been doing is wasting taxpayer money and pushing the three-door SDDD nonsense. And Singapore's bus industry has basically become a laughing stock to the entire world. And and yeah, I know LTA is like often really like, hard on manufacturers and organizers and stuff, but this is just a bit too much. It's like they're completely going in the wrong direction. But with that being said, there are also like other departments in LTA, such as infrastructure team, MRT, bus, or whatever. But right now, I'm not really gonna dwell too much on that. I'm just gonna focus on bus planning league alone, and I will just tell you why no more long bus routes, basically long trunk routes from like, let's say, Woodlands to Pasir Ris or Choa Chu Kang to Hougang, these sorts of like these sorts of bus services that connect different neighborhoods, it was a thing of the past. And I'm just gonna tell you like briefly the reasons why they are not even like continuing on with this trend, which would actually benefit people. So once again, BPL stands for, it's an abbreviation of Bus Planning League, and Bus Planning League only exists to do the dirty work of the LTA bosses. And I just want to put it out there, the people inside Bus Planning League, except the bosses, are not to be blamed for this entire mess that's happening to like the Singapore bus network right now. They are just, trying to earn ah they are just trying to earn a living. They are just regular employees trying to get by, and they have no choice but to listen to their bosses. They have no say, to put it away. So I am not blaming, like, you know, the regular employees or anything. It's only the upper management and higher ups that come up with stupid rules, such as like, oh, no more trunk bus services because I hate them, and now everybody has to like follow them. So yeah, let's dive into it. Oh, that's like a 5 minute introduction. So something that I've learned about like bus planning league is, let's say I would just, roughly draw out the entire country. I know it's not a very good diagram, but yeah. So basically this bus planning league is like divided. Again, it makes no sense because they aren't like bus enthusiasts or anything. A lot of them are just like normal civil servants working in the public sector, government sector. You know, they don't really have like extensive knowledge about the bus network or anything. And this is kind of the problem when you hire people, or you put people in charge that don't really have any bus or train expertise. Trains is another issue, but for bus side, right now, unfortunately, everything is being more or less being run by people who are just like parachuted in, or they're just people who have no passion for buses. They don't really care about, commuters. It's just a regular office job, 9 to 5 office job for them. Some of them might not even take the own take the public transport network that they are in charge of. I mean, not really. The bosses are in charge of them. They are just the ones that who are doing the dirty work. And basically, there is like little to no bus expertise up there right now. And because there is no expertise, they have to like, divide the workload. So there is actually like one of the things that I've learned is that there's actually like bus planning lead central, southwest. I think there's one in CBD as well, east, northeast, and there's north, and there's also probably one in Choa Chu Kang and Bukit Panjang or like Bukit Batok. And then there's one which is like Boon Lay, Jurong East, and then there's the Jurong Industrial Estate. Okay, I'm not sure if this is true or anything. Just conceptually, bus planning league is like split into different subgroups. The issue with this is that each of the subgroups are like, I I don't know the correct word for this, but it's like they're subconsciously competing against each other for their own KPI. They're only really interested in hitting KPI so that they can get their bonus, they can make an honest living or stuff. They just want to make money. They're really money minded. They only care about costs and not really whether it benefits passengers or not, commuters or not. So yeah, basically it's like split into all these different subgroups. And each subgroups is like in charge of like the bus routes in a specific area. So when each of the subgroups, they are only really responsible for their own KPI, they become like innately selfish, which to be honest it isn't really their fault. They aren't really bus enthusiasts. They are just like told to do the work of the higher ups. So Northeast is only concerned about Northeast and Northeast alone, and the same goes for Southwest. So when you want to make a bus service, like a long distance trunk service that cuts through, let's say, from Boon-Lay to Northeast, depending on how you route it, you have to consult bus planning league of this area, possibly bus planning league of Southwest if you're passing through like Dover or Buena Vista. And I'm not even sure if bus planning league Central plans buses for Bukit Timah, but it will definitely involve this, and then it will involve this also. So if you link them up together, you get like 3 to 4 like subgroups of the entire bus planning league, you can say. And this is the issue. They are concerned about their own KPI. They honestly do not want to collaborate with each other. Whereas, if you're just making like short routes, like let's say 861 or the recent 967 or maybe 296, what other recent services are there? Maybe okay, let's say 104, which is 43 M's renumbering. Or if you're doing like service 400 in CBD, or Choa Chu Kang Bukit Panjang, there's stuff like 976, 983, stuff like that. It only involves like one subgroup or like subdivision of bus planning league. It's all intra and not inter. They do not want inter, they only want intra. So basically, this is kind of the reason why they do not want to collaborate once again. So no like inter-neighborhood buses ever come up. And when I mean inter-neighborhood, I don't necessarily mean Woodlands, Yishun, or Sembawang. I'm meaning from like Woodlands to Punggol, then Punggol to Pasir Ris, Pasir Ris to Bedok, that kind of thing. Or even something as simple as, let's say Jukun to UT or Tengah or Boon-Lay to Toa Payoh, stuff like that. So yeah. So that is the reason why the routes are becoming like shorter and shorter. But from my own understanding, if you are making like let's say a city shopper or city direct bus service which is express all the way to CBD, like let's say you traverse through KPE, or from here you traverse through CTE, the expressway sections are considered like dead mileage, dead sections. You don't really have to like rope in the other bus planning league divisions in order to create these CBDs. You only really have to involve bus planning league CBD and bus planning league Northeast, or like between CBD and bus planning league North, which is like Woodlands, Sembawang, Yishun. Again, I'm not sure of their official names. I'm just saying this like conceptually. And that's kind of the reason why in today's context, unfortunately, this kind of like longer distance express services are easier to create. Be it whether it's like a regular express service from say Woodlands to Tampines, or Woodlands to Pasir Ris, Woodlands to Tampines North, or stuff like that. So yeah, it's like they are only really concerned in making like these super expresses and not really express buses with a lot of intermediate stops. Like let's say 502 or 518, because within the neighborhood sectors they have a lot of intermediate stops. And they aren't really interested in doing that. I'm not sure how they're gonna do it for like the new city shoppers, but you can just take it that if anything has to be long distance from now on, like let's say here to here, they would most likely charge express fares. And the reason why they do that is because expressways did mileage and they are really concerned about something called farebox recovery rate. And I won't dive too much into that, but it basically means that they just want the bus route to be sustainable. And the reason why it's like dead mileage is because you're not like carrying any passengers. I mean, for AYE there are lots of bus stops, but for other expressways such as like BKE or CTE, there aren't really bus stops. So pretty much everywhere is a dead sector. And this kind of explains why the city direct services, none of their fare box recovery rates even goes above coefficient 1, which is like less than 100%. They are like loss making in nature, generally speaking. But the reason why they don't really care about that is because city direct bus services, they only run like a minimum of 2 trips and maximum like I think it's like 9 when you think of like 660 and 660M, or 8 in the case of 654 during morning peak. So because they don't run full day, they aren't really that it's not gonna like waste a lot of money, and that's the reason why they keep spawning all these city direct bus services. So I'm just gonna spell it out. So like what I said just now, when you have dead sectors that are not carrying any passengers, your fare box recovery rate decreases. And when you have an area with lots of bus stops and lots of passengers, your FRR increases. So I think conceptually you're able to grasp it. If the FRR is lower than 100% or coefficient 1, it means that the service is losing money. And if the fare box recovery rate is higher than 100%, it is profiting. So the profitable services are things like 284, 902, because 902 literally like it is the buses used are being subconned from like other services. That's why it's so high. 807 and stuff like that. And then there are even cases like 89E as well, which is strange, but because 89E is subcon from 89, 89's farebox recovery rate usually gets underreported, whereas 89E's farebox recovery rate gets overreported. So this one, the farebox recovery rate, like when you take into account all the subcon and borrowing of buses from the parent service 89, it's actually lower in reality. I know this might not be an easy concept to grasp. Even I myself am also like kind of confused by it, but generally this is how it goes. Oh, and I forgot one more. 261 is also profiting a lot because you can just see 261 in real life. It's choked to the brim with passengers and the route is really short. So whatever you're investing into, like let's say 261, you're getting it back. 807 is not that high, but I think 284 is the highest. 902 is like second place. This one gets over-reported, so I'm not gonna count it. And 261 is also pretty high. 807 is like, I think, mid-tier or something along those lines, but these are definitely profiting services. And then loss-making services, as I've said before, it's something like 36 because of all the express sectors, 132 because it carries air, 156 because the route is long and then it doesn't really get a lot of passengers throughout the entire day, 400 because it carries air unless there are like cruise ship departures with a lot of passengers, sorry, I mean like arrivals, but it kind of works for departures as well, but more on the arrival side. And surprisingly, 167, even though it's loss making, the fare box recovery rate is actually higher than all of these. So yeah. So this is kind of the reason why they've completely U-turned on 167's withdrawal. They are not gonna withdraw it or like degrade it anymore in future because 30 minutes per bus seems to be sustainable and Tower Transit can just add more buses ad hoc if deemed necessary. So to kind of sum it up, the reason why it's like crashing really badly, there is no bus expertise. And even people who have bus expertise are not like, you know, in the higher ranks. You just imagine someone who is like actually incompetent leading people who are actually competent but yet have to follow the orders of incompetent people. Just put it that way. Again, really money minded. I can understand the need to like save costs sometimes, but sometimes it just goes a bit too far, I feel. And then the next one I've talked about before. Concern about their own KPI, basically. And it's also really top down. If you're at the bottom, you have no say. You can only do as you're told. Bureaucracy as well. And hierarchy. And I think, I mean, this is just a paraphrase, but this is kind of the reason why the Singapore bus network is like kind of self-destructing. Because of this unreal, to be honest, really unneeded bureaucracy and hierarchy. And to top it all, no bus expertise. And yeah, only care about money, their own KPI. They don't really care about commuters. Some of them don't even really, use the public transport network. They, you know, they manage it, or so-called manage it from an office, but they don't even take it. And that is kind of the problem why. And to kind of sum it up regarding why no long routes are coming out, intra-town routes are easy to plan according to the current system. Like inner town routes, like if it's next door, like short distance, which doesn't really cross any, planning boundaries or anything. Yeah, I feel the planning boundaries are like kind of dumb, to be honest. It- which is why like 114 is not a feeder but a trunk service, simply because of like the planning boundaries. Buangkok. It's weird. I think the boundary is like at Buangkok Drive. It's like you're crossing from Hougang to Sengkang. And when you cross that boundary, you can no longer run a feeder service between these boundaries. You have to make it trunk. I mean, but as long as, okay, be it whether they turn out as feeders or trunks in the end, if the inner town bus service is like short distance, like next door, they can still do it. Like, in the case of 861. But inner town, either long distance or expressway trunk under the current system where they're each division is like fighting against each other for their own KPI. No and no, sadly. And the only way you're getting a long distance bus service is if they're express, they are CDS, or City Shopper, which conceptually is like 502 or 518, but maybe with less stops, depending on which area it serves. So yeah, you may or may not be surprised by the contents of this video, but I honestly worry about the future of the Singapore bus network because nobody seems to care.